We have lots to talk about today, including the possibility of a huge trade involving Mitch Marner to the New York Islanders. We came across a Hockey News article suggesting a trade, so we'll go through what the proposed trade is, how it might work, and see what everybody thinks about it. Maybe it helping both teams. We also have some trade rumors around the Los Angeles Kings and the Minnesota Wild. We're going to recap the most recent playoff action. Of course, we're going to talk a little bit further about the Maple Leafs firing head coach Sheldon Keefe today as well. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a lot to talk about today. Let's start first with recapping the most recent playoff action. We saw a couple of really entertaining games last night, one which was a bit of a blowout, but it's full of fights and lots of physical play. And still, it was a lot more entertaining than it normally is when it's a lopsided score. But the Florida Panthers stormed back to take Game 2 and even the series with the Boston Bruins with a big 6-1 victory. Like I said, there was tons of fights. We even seen Matthew Tkachuk against David Pastrnak. Talk about an unlikely duo that you would not expect to see going. Pretty much everybody at some point was in the scrums and the fighting. I mean, I saw Brandon Montour kind of making fun of Brad Marchand, pretending he was going to lick him or something. Like, I tell you, it was entertaining. And the Bruins certainly don't want to get into a really an overly aggressive fighting matchup here with Florida. Florida is going to probably win those games mucking up against just about anybody. However, the fact that you saw star players like Pastrnak willing to fight will, I think, give the Bruins a much better chance of bouncing back. Obviously, Jeremy Swayman ended up getting pulled for Linus Ullmark, and I think it was the third period, if I'm not mistaken. I still think they'll probably come back with Swayman. It wasn't really so much him being a bad goalie last night. It was really the team in front of him was playing a lot of uninspired hockey early on. But, Pastrnak said, listen, he's like, I'm willing to take a punch for these, my teammates, these guys in here. I'm willing to do anything it takes to help them win. You saw Tkachuk and Pastrnak were both talking right in front of the referees because they were sorting out a bunch of other penalties, and they were both over waiting for the refs to kind of explain how it was all going to work out. And Tkachuk was kind of trying to get Pastrnak going and telling them they should fight. And then next shift they came out, and they did. You could see Pastrnak talk on the bench to head coach Jim Montgomery and kind of get his blessing, so to speak. So it's a very highly entertaining game. I suspect it's going to be a bit of a brawl throughout the entire series, and I suspect Boston will bounce back and play a lot better in the next game, especially where the series will shift back to Boston for games 3 and 4. We saw the Edmonton Oilers and Vancouver Canucks open up their series last night. Game 1, the Oilers had a really good start. The Canucks got off to not a great start with being disciplined. They gave the Oilers some power plays, and the Oilers cashed in like they pretty much always do. They had a 4-1 lead later in the game. They ended up dropping the game 5-4 after a really big third period comeback by the Vancouver Canucks. Obviously, there wasn't really great goaltending on both sides. I think Sheloff's let in some goals that he'd like to have back for Vancouver. Skinner definitely let in some goals that he'd like to have back for Edmonton. Leon Draisaitl got hurt at one point. Left the game for, I think it was about 8 minutes or so on the clock that he missed. He did return after, but post-game the coach said it was cramping and equipment issues. I highly doubt that. I mean, I don't think we're going to see a case of Draisaitl missing time. It's unlikely. I mean, look at when he was hurt before in playoffs. He basically was playing on one leg, and he was still one of the best guys out there. It's going to take a lot more than that to keep him out of action, but at the same time, they don't need Leon dealing with injuries. That's not going to help matters at all. And it certainly showed last night that without playing a stronger defensive game, and if Skinner's not going to be on his game, that the Canucks can beat them. There's no doubt. So obviously, I don't think anybody's in trouble yet. It's one game, but Edmonton needs to get their act together and play better for sure. So we'll see where things go on that front. Adam Henrique and Leon Draisaitl are guys kind of considered day-to-day for Edmonton right now. So we'll see if they can deal with that or how serious those situations become. Tonight's game with Carolina and the New York Rangers will be getting underway here shortly as I start to record this video. Kuzmenko is back in for the Hurricanes, and they're going to Tkachuk, and Freddie Anderson will get the night off tonight. Rod Brindamore said that Freddie could get some rest, which I think they just need to try something different here. Anderson was phenomenal since he returned to the regular season and the early part of the playoffs. These games against the Rangers, he hasn't been quite as good. The team in front of him hasn't been at their absolute best either. And I think at this point, down 2-0, you just need to try something different. You have a good option there. Tkachuk hasn't played in a little while, so they'll go to him and see what happens here. Team USA announced their leadership group today for the World Championships. Ottawa Senators captain Brady Tkachuk will be captain for Team USA. Brock Nelson of the Islanders, Zach Werenski of the Blue Jackets, and Werenski's former D partner in Chicago, Seth Jones, will all be wearing A's as alternate captains for Team USA. So that's certainly great to see. The U.S. look like they're going to have a really good team, really fun team as well. Lots of young, very highly talented offensive guys. Like Brady Tkachuk's playing on a line with Trevor Zegras and Cole Caulfield. I mean, that's certainly not something you would ever typically get to see. So it's going to be fun to see how all these guys kind of play together, and if they can bring home a medal, which I'm sure they'll be one of the favorites to win, so it wouldn't be any surprise. Canada's got a good team as well, but I think the U.S. seems to have more of the young guns, like whereas the Canada has like Celebrini and Fantilli both come back home. They're not going to play. They do have Connor Bedard and lots of other exciting players, but they've got Zegras and Caulfield and Tkachuk, and they've got even like Will Smith and Ryan Leonard, not even in the NHL yet. So we'll see how these two teams will square up. They likely won't meet until we get into the playoffs. I believe the way the schedule is and the groupings, that they won't see each other during the preliminary round. As I mentioned as well, we got big news today that Sheldon Keefe was let go by the Toronto Maple Leafs. There is a dedicated video on the channel from earlier. If you haven't had a chance to watch that, certainly check it out. I'm just going to briefly touch on it now. He's there for 4.5 years, 5 playoff years, .665 winning percentage. Problem is, he only has 1 playoff series win, and then they follow that up by getting their asses whooped by the Florida Panthers last year. So, yes, they got their first series win, but then they really didn't go anywhere after that. Didn't come close to winning the second round. Sheldon Keefe put out a video on his social media kind of thanking the Leafs, and as well as all of the right people in management and everybody that was involved with getting him the opportunity, as well as the fan base for the long run and opportunity, but admitted that he took accountability, that didn't get the job done. He knows it's a results-based business, and at the end of the day, the Leafs never got over that hump, and unfortunately, he pays the price. He's had signed an extension for 2 more years, so he doesn't have to worry about money, that's for sure. He'll still be getting paid handsomely to sit at home, but it's already rumored that he'll be in the mix for some of these other jobs should he be interested. It's believed that the New Jersey Devils would like to talk to him about their vacancy as well. And there could be some others. I mean, obviously, there's the job at the Seattle Kraken, there's San Jose, Winnipeg Jets. So there could be certainly other opportunities here for Keefe. So we'll see who else, even the LA Kings too, because they have an interim coach, but we don't know for sure if they're going to stick with Jim Hiller and his staff, with DJ Smith being an assistant, or if they're going to go in a new direction. I'm not sure who all they're talking to in LA. We haven't heard a lot, so there could be some opportunities there. As far as who the new Leafs head coach is going to be, not a lot of names floating up there just yet. We're going to hear from Leafs management tomorrow morning in a presser, which will be involving Brendan Shanahan, as well as Brad Treliving and new MLSE president Keith Pelly. I don't know if they probably won't give us any names, of course, but they'll probably give us an idea what their search process will look like, the timelines, etc. Obviously, we're hearing a lot about Craig Berube, but is he going to be taking another job? Is he wanting to go to Toronto? We don't know those answers. Some other experienced coaches that are on the market too, looking for work, include Todd McClellan, Jay Woodcroft, Dean Evison, Gerard Gallant's reportedly trying to find work again as well. He could be an option. And it's been brought up, and I know some people have reservations because of how things went down in Chicago, and I fully understand that, and I have those concerns too. But Coach Joe Quenneville, we know Quenneville's trying to be reinstated by the NHL and get back to coaching, so there is that. And I kind of half wonder about Bruce Boudreau. Bruce Boudreau has a great coaching record and has a passion for the game like almost nobody else. And he loves the Toronto Maple Leafs. I mean, he was a Toronto Maple Leaf way back in his playing days, which was a long, long time ago. And I think he would love to coach the Leafs if he could get that opportunity. Now, whether or not he fits to what they're looking for, I'm not sure. But I think at the very least, I'd consider it. And I wonder if they even reached out to him about being an assistant, if they went in a different direction for the head coach, if he would do that too. So it's certainly a name to think about. At least I think it is. Anyways, we did learn a little bit more too as well about the new Sens head coach, Travis Green. Of course, they introduced him to the media yesterday. He's in some radio hits, as well as Steve Staios, the president and GM. Done a lot of talking here. One thing that I didn't realize, because I never really thought of it first, but it has been brought up in other areas where they've been talking, is, Travis Green does have a connection to the Tkachuk family, which I hadn't thought of right away. But Travis Green and Keefe Tkachuk were teammates for a while, for a few years in Arizona. Travis Green played with a variety of teams. I know for me, I kind of associate him most with being a Maple Leaf, but really at the end of the day, he was only there for 2 or 3 years. And he was there when the Battle of Ontario was at its peak, during those days where both the Leafs and Sens were battling and meeting in the playoffs and all that kind of stuff, playing on a line with Darcy Tucker and Shane Corson. Like, that was one heck of a mean line. So that's what I associate Travis Green with the most when I think of him as a player, but he's played for a variety of teams. And he was teammates with Keefe Tkachuk. I'm not saying Keefe Tkachuk controls everything, but I'm just saying for Ottawa, if they wanted to get a quick reference from somebody that they know and trust in their opinion, it would be easy to do. Obviously Brady Tkachuk already was interviewed over at the World Championships where he's representing USA, as we just talked about, and being named captain today. Was asked about the announcement. He said that he has had a conversation with Travis Green. He did reach out to him and talk to him via phone, and that he feels that Travis Green is exactly what they need. Now, of course, I know I've seen people talking on social media. Ottawa fans are still not in love with this choice. And I don't expect Brady to come out and say, oh, yeah, that was terrible. He's not the coach we need. He's never going to say those things. But he didn't have to give the endorsement he did either. And to me, I think if you get a couple of your leaders like Brady Tkachuk, Claude Giroux, if they believe that you have the right people involved, then they'll influence the rest of the group. And I just kind of want to give Sens fans a little bit more information there on that front. Like I said, basically, if Keefe Tkachuk, who knows him, and I'm not saying that the Sens are going to talk to Keefe Tkachuk about making a personnel decision like that, but if they wanted to get an opinion and wanted to get a character reference or anything of that nature, they have an easy source there to do that with. And for all intents and purposes, I think Travis Green's going to be a better coach and a better fit than a lot of people want to give him credit for. So we will see where that goes. Lots of rumors today. We're going to get into Mitch Marner here in just a few minutes. But first, we have some other teams to look at. The Minnesota Wild are in the news and in the rumor mill about wanting to make some moves here. GM Bill Guerin's made it known that he's to some degree open for business. Obviously, the Wild are going to have still a unique and tough salary cap situation to deal with based on the buyouts for Parise and Suter. And it is known, according to the fourthperiod.com and Dave Pagnotta, that goaltender Philip Gustafsson is on the trade block. Doesn't mean for sure he's going to get moved, but they are very much open to it. He's got 2 years left at 3.75, and we kind of seen the same thing in Minnesota that we saw of him in Ottawa. 2 years back, like his first year in Mini, he was great. He had a great season, really good numbers, and a lot of people were, especially Sens fans, were shaking their head going, geez, why couldn't he have done this in Ottawa? Whereas, Cam Talbot comes over and was inconsistent, hurt, and didn't do that well. Those are the breaks right now. Meanwhile, this year, Talbot goes to LA, starts off strong again, so you're really starting to wonder what's wrong with Ottawa and goaltenders. Why is it people don't come here and do well? But then by the second half of the year, Talbot had fallen off drastically. So then you're, okay, well, maybe it's not the team, but to some degree it could be. Obviously, they haven't been strong defensively for a while, which does play a role. But in case of Gustafsson, this year was a major step back for him as well. So, I guess looking at that, the inconsistency. But Minnesota's re-signed Marc-Andre Fleury. We know he's going to play one more year. And they have Jesper Wallstedt waiting in the wings here. Done some really good work in the minors and is ready to come up to the NHL. So at this point, I think they're ready and willing to go with Fleury and Wallstedt. A great mentor for him for a year. And then the hope would be in 2 years' time that Wallstedt would be ready to be the full-time starter. That's the plan. Looks like, so if all works out and they move Gustafsson, that's how they would proceed. Now, like I said, if they don't get the deal they're looking for, they probably don't do that, but they need to find some money, to some space, and this is a great contract for them to try to accomplish that with. There's lots of teams looking for goaltending, either help or to shake things up. So Philip Gustafsson's name is certainly out there as a name that they're willing to move. So don't be surprised if he does get traded. Hard to say exactly where he could go. It wouldn't be shocking if he went to a team like LA, for example, follow Talbot and replace him again. Even Toronto, for some example, we know likely next year going to be going with Joseph Wall and some sort of veteran. Gustafsson may not be the guy, but a guy like that who's not making a ton of money but has some experience, who could work with Wall. They need somebody who can, who can play a good load of games, because Joseph Wall's good, but he can't seem to stay healthy, and that seems to be the issue around him. If they don't have a capable backup who can play a bigger, or either backup or like a 1A, 1B situation, and Wall continues this injury history like we've seen, it's going to be a major issue for them. So clearly, they need somebody who's quite capable to either run a 1A, 1B, or for Wall to be more of a backup. So we'll see how things go. Marco Rossi also was out there and available for trade, although it's not like Bill Guerin's out there trying to give him away or trying to shop him, but he has made it known that he can be made available and he's willing to put him in deals. It sounds like for a deal involving Gustafsson, they don't really want money or players back. It looks like they want more future base. So expect a Gustafsson trade, if it happens, to produce picks and prospects type of package. Whereas in the case of Rossi, they would want another comparable age young player who was maybe drafted similarly. So if they could swap him for another player who's been in the league 2-3 years and has maybe a first round type draft pedigree, but plays a different style, maybe different position, that's probably what they would like to do. It's not that they don't like Rossi, I just think they want a different type of player to fit with their mix better. At least that seems to be the plan. I mean, they do have other players that are coming in the mix here through the pipeline, like Yurov. And I think the plan is long term. They see him and Eriksson Ek being the top 6 centers. So I kind of believe Rossi, long term at least, being more of a third line player, which he can be. But I think they need a different style of player to play that game. So we'll see. It's not a given that Rossi moves, but it's known that they're open to it. In LA, one player that's pretty much a given to be moved. It's just a matter of hard to say where, but Arthur Kaliev, especially after we've seen the end of season media availability, and Rob Blake made comments that saying that Kaliev didn't really help them much at all down the stretch. It's clear that they're not thrilled with his development and don't see him as being a part of their team moving forward. They have other young talent like that they are going to try to get into the lineup and get a little bit younger as well, free up some cap space, but at the same time they want to remain competitive and move forward in the playoffs. We know they're veterans. They're like Doughty and Kopitar. Don't want to see them really rebuilding or anything of that nature, taking steps backwards. But I know like Akil Thomas looks like he's ready for more of a full-time role, so they're going to try to figure out, getting him in. I think to some degree, unless they do move him, Alex Turcotte's another name to watch. But he was such a high pick. I think they really want to try to make that work before they give up on him. So there's his name out there as well. So, and they're not the only ones. They do have other players that are certainly ready for more looks and bigger roles in the NHL. So we'll have to see where that goes. But Kaliev seems to be done in LA. It's just a matter of who gets them. I mean, there's lots of teams out there, especially teams that are rebuilding, that might be able to benefit from a player like him. He is a player with a good shot and is known for his goal-scoring prowess. That's what he was mostly known for in junior, and we'll see if he can pick it up in the NHL here and be more consistent, I guess, is what they're looking for. And lastly, Toronto Maple Leafs, Mitch Marner. Could he end up with old GM Lou Lamoriello on Long Island? I came across an article via the Hockey News suggesting this trade, and after reading through it, it's like, you know what, to some degree, I do see the benefits possibly to both sides. So let's have a talk about it here on the channel and see what everybody thinks. Now, I don't want to flood this channel with Mitch Marner trade talk, day after day. That's not my intention here, but just understand that Mitch Marner and the Toronto Maple Leafs are a major hot topic right now because they have some big names that are rumored to be possibly, getting moved. But a team like that has superstar players is going to be expected to make big changes, it generates a lot of buzz, generates a lot of talking points, and there's lots of rumors out there. So I just talk about the news and what's in the rumor mill, and there's going to be lots and lots of reports coming out around this player. So we'll see what happens. It's going to be a little bit probably before we get any action. It's probably going to be until July 1st or a little bit after before we really have a for sure grip on what they're going to do. But at the end of the day, Marner to the Islanders could make sense. We know the New York Islanders, they need to get younger. They need to get more talented offensively. They have great goaltending. I know they didn't always get it this year. Sorokin was a bit off this year, but they still have an all-star goaltender in Sorokin, a terrific backup in Varlamov. That's not a position they really need to be too concerned about. For the most part, their D is pretty good too, but it's not perfect. But defensively, as a team, they typically are pretty good. So really the main area of focus for the Islanders is they need to be more consistent up front, scoring goals. They've, obviously they brought in a guy like Bo Horvat here in the last, year and a half, whatever it's been now. And for the most part, he's been pretty good for them. But they need more, and they need to move out some of the older talent. Like we know Martin and Clutterbuck need new contracts. I mean, maybe Islanders fans might feel differently, but I think they need to move on. I think they need players that are younger and faster. They don't, for the fourth line, they don't necessarily need high-end skill, but they need some good, gritty players. They need guys who can play a similar style as them, but they need to find a way to get younger and faster. It's a fast game, and the Islanders team, to me, could be much better if they had some more speed in there. A guy like Marner, who's a great skater, great playmaker, obviously, knows Lou Lamoriello quite well. Lou knows what he's capable of. Could be a good infusion of skill up front to help them with that. Imagine Marner playing with guys like Horvat and Barzal. Could be a great help. Now, here's how a trade could work. Obviously, for the Islanders to absorb Marner's salary, they'd have to move some money out. There's no doubt. A couple of players that I think the Leafs would have interest in. One would be they'd want to include a defenseman for sure. So you're probably looking at Pulock or Pelech. I'm thinking probably Ryan Pulock would be the main one they would prefer to put in this deal. I think another player that could be intriguing, but I believe there's some trade protection, so it may not be the easiest thing to work around. But a guy like Brock Nelson. Now, Nelson, of course, very familiar with John Tavares. They played together when before JT left Long Island, and they had good success together. Nelson, for the most part, been a center, but he can't play wing. He's 33 and needs a new contract. He's going into a final year. Been very productive. He's been one of their better goal scorers. So, obviously, moving out a guy like Nelson is risky in a sense because you got to replace those goals. But obviously bringing in a guy like Marner who can put up a lot of offense would help with that. But my only reason I'm suggesting Nelson here is, for one, you need to put value in to get value out. Obviously, he's a decent amount older than Marner, but do you really want to be signing Nelson to a 5 to 7 year deal at his current age? Probably not. If he would agree to a 2 or 3 year extension at a similar amount of money, maybe you do that. But the problem is the Islanders are an older team. They have a lot of older players, and they really could benefit from moving some guys out. So obviously a guy like Nelson, as much as you like him, he's been productive. Do you need, it's a similar case with Marner. You look at the Leafs. I mean, not that anybody's old or anything like that, but they've already committed to Matthews. They've already committed to Nylander. John Tavares would have less value. He's older. Marner's the guy that still needs a new contract that you think you don't really want to have to commit that money to based on how he's played in the playoffs, and you want to retool your team a bit, right? So it's the same sort of concept in LA, or not in LA, in Long Island. So, at the end of the day, the Islanders have some long-term deals. They've committed to Barzal. They've committed to Horvat. They still have some more term left on some other players, like Captain Anders Lee. But, when it comes to some guys like Nelson, Palmieri, obviously, they can't all stick around on extensions because they're not young enough, they're not fast enough, and they need to start replacing those guys. The problem is the New York Islanders don't really have much coming in the way of prospects. They absolutely don't. They do have a few decent prospects like Ishakov, Dufour, But obviously McLean got into some games this year. He looks like he's a pretty decent guy. He could probably be a good replacement on the fourth line, but they don't have a lot, and there's not really much in the prospect pool. There's nothing that's really like high-end talent. Like that's for sure top six. Like there's possibility, I won't be shocked, maybe if William Dufour gets there. He's shown signs of it when he was in junior, glimpses of it in the AHL, but not consistent yet. Hard to say. But at the end of the day, a guy like Marner I think would be a terrific fit in Long Island. We know Lou is desperate to make a big move to shake up this team. The other thing, though, is I don't know. The thing with Toronto is, at the end of the day, they're not going to get the value back I think a lot of people would, because Marner makes a big salary, which is a problem for a lot of teams. He's only got 1 year left on his contract, so that doesn't increase the value there at all. It decreases it. And he's got a no-move clause, so he's got all the leverage. So he'd have to agree to it, right? So at the end of the day here, you've got a case of Marner kind of driving the value down. If they could get a good forward and a good defenseman back, that's pretty good. Now, it doesn't mean that for sure it'd have to include Nelson and Pulock. Maybe the Leafs only take Pulock and some combination of picks and prospects or something in there, and then they take the rest of his savings on the cap and they go and find other money, or other players with that money, which they could do. I don't know if Pulock's the right defenseman, because I know the team would probably be screaming for more of a number one. Pulock's a guy who can play solid top 4 minutes, could possibly be a good partner for Morgan Riley. Hard to say exactly, but I think the Islanders would be of benefit to try to see if they can move a guy like Pajot. And I'd be, like I said, a little leery on extending Nelson just because of the age and where the team is at overall. They've got too many aging players on committed contracts. So Marner to the Islanders makes sense. It does for them. I don't know if they can give the Leafs a perfect package that they would want to do it, but like I said before, it's not going to be a case of the Leafs looking at this going, geez, yeah, that's a good deal, we should take it. This is going to be a case of saying, we've already committed to moving this player, we want to get him a fresh start, we want that cap space, we're not going to extend him. If we don't do it, we don't want to sign him, he's leaving next year for nothing, we got to get what we can, which is kind of sucks, but they've put themselves in this predicament by giving out no trade clauses and no move clauses like it's candy. So they've painted themselves into this corner. And it's not even the current regime for the most part. Yes, you can blame Shanahan. He was involved in a lot of these contracts and giving these top 4 guys everything they want under the sun and agreeing to all these contract demands, which to me were a little bit ridiculous, but it's too late now at the end of the day. So there's going to be lots of talk, like I said, around Marner. We talked just not long ago about a potential trade to Nashville for UC Saros. I think that would be a terrific type of deal for Toronto. We don't know who the new head coach is going to be yet, obviously, but at the end of the day, the Leafs do need to do something. We should get a better idea tomorrow after management speaks to get an idea where they stand, and just to we won't know what the changes will be, but we should hopefully get a feel for what type of changes we could be looking at here for Toronto, because I don't see a case of them running it back with this top 4 guys again. Because at this point, Marner and Tavares are both trending towards being a UFA in a year. I mean, a lot of people think they need to talk to JT as well and see if they can move him, but I don't know that he's going to want to do that. I know some people have said, well, do you really, at least with Tavares, you signed him as a free agent. If, you would maybe consider signing him back for a lot less money, whereas there's no chance that's going to happen with Marner. So with Tavares, like I said, you got him as a free agent. You didn't give up anything for him. If he does walk, okay, you can live with it. You got your 7 years out of him. He, for the most part, was a good player. Was he an $11 million player? No, never. It was an overpayment, but at least he wasn't a really bad player. Like, he did live up, fulfill the contract, and for the most part, gave you decent production. If he's willing to stay and take, maybe like a $4 million deal or something for a couple of years, or $3 million, something much, much less to help the team win, you consider that, because he's still an okay player. It's just not an $11 million player. But Marner, is not taking a discount. He's just starting to hit his prime years and is going to be looking to cash in as much money as he can. That's the problem. Would Lou want to work out an extension, or will his agent even let him and keep pushing him to go to UFA status, because that's going to impact his trade status too. Marner's agent is, expected to push him as much as possible to take the UFA route, and if they do that, the Leafs might not be able to trade Marner, and he may walk for nothing and call his own shot anyway, and the Leafs don't get anything back. So you've got to think the Leafs talk to them and make sure that doesn't happen. So let me know your thoughts on a Marner trade, as well as everything else discussed here today down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.